Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Concord Township Board of Trustees meeting for January 15, 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Dawson, the roll call, please.
Mr. McIntosh.
Present.
Mrs. Lucci.
Present.
And Mr. Dondorfer.
Present. We will need an approval of the minutes for January 2nd, 2020, which was the organizational and regular trustee meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the minutes as written for the January 2nd, 2020 organizational meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Elected officials reports. Amy, fiscal officer.
Okay, Andy gave my report at the last meeting because I was unable to do so. But the one thing I will be asking you to give your blessing to this evening is the end of the year financial report. You did receive them about a week and a half ago.
Right.
And we did finish the year with $5,100,000. So you'll see that under old business this evening, and that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Trustees report. Mrs. Lucci.
Only thing to report is I'm happy to be here. Nice to meet new faces today. Working hard to get acclimated, meeting some of the, and going over some of the service department with the leaders, and looking very forward to serving the Concord. Thank you.
Mr. McIntosh.
Just happy to be here. Excited to start to get underway here for 2020. And I just didn't mention it last month, but it had some conversations with folks in my neighborhood and the community about the fire station and the various conversations on social media regarding the citizen advisory committees and so forth. So I've been having some ongoing dialogue about that.
Okay, great. I had some contact with a resident on Coleridge Road. We've been working on a road improvement issue that needed repair. We remedied that. We're going to do some more work on that in the spring. I did field a question from a resident on Prouty Road who had some concerns for traffic safety in regards to speeding vehicles and reckless vehicles. I made some contacts with the Sheriff's Department there. They're going to be doing some traffic enforcement and spending some time out there. And that's all I have right now. Mr. Rose, under Department Reports, Administration, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dondorfer, members of the board, Mrs. Dawson, members of the audience, good evening. I want to take a few minutes to touch on the fire station and update you on that project. Fire chief and I have been exploring options to move forward on this very important project. We have been and continue to re-review stations in Northeast Ohio that have been recently constructed. We're going back through our previous research on those projects in order to see where we can reduce costs in order to fund the project without going back to the community for additional funding. We're also exploring the option to possibly relocate the project across the street. That's where the soccer field is on 608. And that would be in an effort to reduce community impact, and it may result in reduced costs, but that's very early in the process. Financing options are being explored in conjunction with our fiscal officer. Another piece of this update involves the architect. As you're aware, we are currently out of contract. We are waiting for a quote on the cost to redesign the station under a smaller footprint, possibly changing some building materials in order to reduce costs. We have not received a quote from the architect as of this afternoon, but we anticipate one in the near future. And once I get that, I'll share that. Chief and I will. I am well aware there's a group of citizens that's anxious to become involved in order to provide input to the station redesign. According to the December 12th, 2019 press release, they are going to provide a list of names along with their associated areas of expertise. I'm speaking for myself, while I always welcome citizen input, I'll talk to anybody. I personally believe the citizens of Concord Township will be satisfied if the station is built without the ask of another tax levy. In fact, I had a meeting with the treasurer and spokesperson of the group, and he stated as such. The fiscal officer, the fire chief, myself, we should be prepared to give the trustees a more robust update on possible courses of action by the end of the month. Hopefully at the staff meeting, we'll have a better update for you. So that's my nickel on the fire station. On another note, I want to touch on the subject of NOPEC. We have been a NOPEC energy affiliate since 2001. Recently, we received a handful of calls of concern regarding the fact that customers were switched to NOPEC from their current electric and/or gas provider. This was done for customers who were out of contract with their utility provider. It should be noted, NOPEC did send a letter to all households in November and December explaining the opt-in and opt-out process and procedures and what they needed to do. Unfortunately, it's likely some of these notices were probably misidentified as junk mail by some of our residents. We are going to publish some information on our website by the end of the week on how NOPEC works and how residents can easily opt out if they wish. And as always, we're available to answer resident questions concerning this matter. And then finally, I received and accepted on behalf of the trustees a resignation letter from Ken Whitig. He is our part-time fire education specialist. He will be retiring on January 30th of 2020, and we wish him well, happiness and success in his retirement. And that concludes my report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Okay, we are now to the audience portion of the meeting tonight. If you'd like to come up to the podium and speak, I just ask that you state your name and address. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive. I say congratulations to the new trustees. Welcome to the battle, as they say. I have two items, really cost containment items. I just received the Grapevine, very professional magazine. I'm just wondering what it cost to produce that. Do you know a cost per copy? And what's the total cost that we spend?
I don't know the cost per copy, but I can get that information.
If you
for
could, that would be appreciated.
It's also supplemented by advertising, so.
Yeah, I'm just
Do you
wondering
want
what
that as
the
well?
net cost is. And the reason I ask, it's very professional, glossy, very, very well done. Do we do that in-house as far as the layout? Or is that done by an advertising company for us?
I think it's both. So
Both.
Deb puts together a basic layout, sends it when she gets back.
I just give you a point of reference. We produce a newspaper, Lobbyists for Citizens, for 8 pages. It costs us 7 cents a copy. We're going to produce one for 14 pages. It will cost us 14 cents a copy for full color. Just give you a point of reference. The second item, we saw an article in the News Herald, and we don't necessarily believe everything that we read in the News Herald. My experience with them has been less than satisfactory when I deal with county issues such as the Better Flip. I've been very disappointed in the reporting. This has to do with this is an article dealing with Painesville and Concord Township and the shared use of a ladder truck. And it says in the article that Concord is not interested in sharing the cost. I just wondered if that was true, or is this another misreporting?
If I can take that, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
We currently share a ladder truck that we split the cost with the city of Painesville. That ladder truck has since been taken out of service. It is got some significant structural issues, and it's not safe to operate as a firefighting apparatus. The city of Painesville asked us if we wanted to go halves on another apparatus to the tune of about $600,000.
600,000 each?
each. They're about 1.1 to 1.3 million. We passed on that. We have the ability to get mutual aid from a ladder truck in Painesville Township. We have mutual aid agreements, well, all the Lake.
So we have agreements with other
We do.
townships?
Chardon has a
I
ladder
believe
truck.
Chardon also.
Yeah.
While we would love to have a ladder truck, it's not in the
It's
budget.
cost prohibitive.
And with trying to finance and come up with ways to finance the fire station, it just doesn't work.
Yeah. And so this is just a matter, we've already got the arrangement with another township.
We do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Mr. Hack?
Good evening.
Evening.
Tom Hack, 11575 Fay Road. And I just have a couple of questions. So I'm not sure if I heard a contradiction or not. But Mr. McIntosh, when you spoke, you mentioned that you had an opportunity to talk to people about the possibility of people working on a citizens committee to support the fire station. When I heard Mr. Rose speak, it sounded as if that was not necessarily in the offing.
That's my opinion, sir.
Okay. So,
And my comment was, I took questions in my neighborhood from neighbors who approached me and asked what was going on based on comments on Nextdoor. That was my dialogue, was just explaining there. I nothing more than to communicate. There's comments on Nextdoor about it. And that's really it. People asked me what we were doing, and I said, we're not doing anything right now with it. It's conversation online. And we hadn't, as of that time, been approached or I've not had any dialogue with you about it. So I basically just said, we as a board haven't talked to anybody about it. It's just
okay.
whatever's on, you know what's out there. I mean, the press release and different things, and people have asked me what it's about, and I've explained it to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. Is it the trustees' intention to put together an advisory panel or?
What do you mean, what do you see as an advisory panel? Maybe that's where
Well,
we're having some differences in.
So let me ask you, as trustees, you know, there was a significant vote against the last effort to build fire stations, which we all agree need to be done, right? There's
Correct.
almost universal agreement that needs to happen. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want advisors, you know, to reference the community in this process so that we have that buy-in that we all seek? Right?
We are going to welcome members of the community to come in and give input, which is what you're asking for. We believe it's important as we move this project forward to get community input.
So what's the mechanism?
I'm asking you, maybe that's where the contradiction or what you're thinking is as far as the way you perceive that. I see as we start to frame this project and get some opinions on how we're going to move it forward, because we all agree it's a priority, is that we are going to invite people to come in and give ideas and input on how to move this thing forward. That might be people that are in your group, in your collective group, that you're going to bring a couple members in to bring your message or bring your ideas. There might be some other people from outside the community. I've talked to several members that are willing to come in and sit down and also contribute some ideas. So that's the way I sort of see it, whether that's in office hours or at a special meeting or during a township trustee meeting. It's facilitating the ability to have interaction with people.
I think to
on
Mr.
the plan.
Gondorfer's question, I guess a couple things. So to be very straightforward with the feedback I got was very negative. Was what is this, and well, I don't want to see you do that kind of a thing. And you know, it was very direct communication about people objecting to the notion of doing it. Isn't that your job? Is what I was told. Okay, so from my standpoint, you know, I was involved in the appointment process of Ms. Lucci and getting her into the township. And so January 1 came, I became a trustee, and I've been studying the fire department. Okay, so I'm finding my way through that process and learning those things. So, and I haven't been made aware of who is on the committee. The press release said it was to be later announced, and in a little bit of research that we had received from Mr. Rose, there was conversation about other townships and how they use citizen advisory committees, and there was conversations about bylaws. So to Mr. Dondorfer's question is, I guess maybe I'm, and it sounds like Carl is as well, a little unclear as exactly what you're proposing. To that effect, I'm never opposed to resident feedback. As I read about fire stations and understand all of these things, there's a lot of things going on here. I've boiled down a lot of statistics and looked into a lot of details of the fire station, still exploring that. Don't have any recommendations on what the next plan is yet. So I think we're at a point where we're not deliberating or looking at anything yet. So I don't have a particular way in or way not. There's a lot of things to be said here, and I completely value resident input. So whether there's a formal committee that works in some kind of a structure or not, it's not to say that we don't want to dialogue with residents and be open and explain what's going on in decisions. I think, you know, what's the scope of the committee that you're proposing? How do you stand to have it work? Is I think would be a question I'd have.
And I think that's what you were looking for. We exchanged emails. You wanted involvement in the process. We are going to welcome that. We believe it's important. We all have the same goal in mind. Okay, and another one of the goals was they needed to be affordable. So
right. So we all agree with that. So I guess I was hoping that there would be, frankly, more proactivity on the part of the trustees to
more what?
Proactivity.
Proactivity.
Maybe that's not a word, but so I guess I would have hoped that the trustees would be more proactive in trying to engage with the community on this. So let me give you an example of what we've done with Riverside Schools. We were successful in passing a levy to build 2 elementary schools. So we put together a formal committee to help us in the design process. So we invited people who elected office. We invited residents. It was a formal process. There were probably, over the course of the design process, we probably had 10 or 15 meetings, and people from the community were able to be part of that exchange, dialogue, and process. I wouldn't see why you wouldn't want to do something similar in this context. There obviously, we all agree that we need new fire stations, but clearly there was not consensus on how to move forward based on what happened in November. And why would you potentially risk not having feedback, immediate feedback, on things that maybe are not. I was very patient with you, so I'm almost done. Why wouldn't you want that collaboration to get to that consensus that everybody can buy into and be proud of and happy with the fire stations or fire station, however it works out, that moves forward? That's my point.
Okay. Whoever said that we didn't want collaboration? I mean, I guess where I'm going.
So if just to be clear, formal collaboration. Sure, you know, it's great that you're willing to listen to people, but frankly, having a committee that meets on a regular basis and has collaboration with what's going on, understands what's going on in the design process and the financing, that's really where the rubber meets the road, and where you get the most value from having community input.
Okay, well, I don't necessarily agree with your statement that we're not proactive. This is our second meeting since coming together as a board. We've been very busy and involved in getting up on task, everybody with the fire station project, as well as hiring a department head and some other things that we had to do with our initial business.
Okay.
And setting the budget for the year. So I don't agree with that.
You've had a lot going on, there's no doubt.
That we're not proactive. You're entitled to that. That's not accurate, okay? I have always maintained, and we have collectively agreed, that we are going to collaborate with the community on this fire station project to move it forward. I can't tell you at this point exactly what that's going to look like as far as what you're saying. Is it a committee? Again, this is our second meeting.
What are you afraid of with a committee?
I'm not. I didn't say I was afraid of anything.
Okay, well, that's certainly. Then why wouldn't you embrace it?
Who said we didn't embrace it?
Because I can't pin you down. I can't pin you down, and that's a problem.
We're in the process of trying to determine how we're going to move this project forward and what venue that is gonna be as far as bringing in members of the community to move this project forward. I didn't say I was against anything.
Okay, but I understand, and I don't want to discount we've had a change in leadership. We have an opportunity within Concord to kind of, there's been animosity, there's no doubt, I think most of you would acknowledge. This is an opportunity to start with a clean slate. This is a big project. This is whatever is decided is going to last in Concord for the next 75 years probably. Why not have that collaborative opportunity where we're sitting down in a formal way and get input from people in the community on how to move forward? I mean, I don't see what could possibly be a reservation on any of the three of yours parts.
Well, again, and I guess I would say, I echo Carl's statements is that I don't know that we're not saying that, but again, I've asked a question specifically with respect to how, I think if we're going to have a committee, I think we need to understand members, how it's going to function and what that process is. And the other side of it is, just like we did with the trustee position, is I think it needs to be open to, ACT has prepared a list of people that's interested into the community. It seems to me, we have a mandate as elected officials to represent all of Concord, so it seems to us that we would want to, also
broad-based, it needs to be broad-based.
open that process up and solicit other people. I think we need to assess whether that's a worthwhile project. And again, as I said earlier with respect to, you asked for clarification about the report, I also spoke to a bunch of residents that objected to the notion of having such committee. So I would say for myself, I'm weighing the pros and cons of that. And one thing I'd like to add is that you mentioned something about the defeat of it and so forth. Let's also, I guess, I don't know, be fair in the sense that that was a project that was spearheaded and presented by a completely different board, and we have a whole entirely new board here who is trying to get our head around the decisions they made,
mostly new
why
board.
they were right. Mr. Dondorfer came in at the very end of that project, so when you think about the architect decision that was made years ago and the design that came together, it was
Right.
so speaking for my experience and what I've been doing the last couple of weeks is getting my head around that plan and why is it the way it is. So I don't feel personally at this point prepared to discuss that until I'm educated. I don't want to have a conversation until I know what I'm talking about,
Okay.
for one.
Fair enough.
Mr. Hack, we understand, as you told us and communicated in your emails, the bond levy failed. We all have the same goal in hand as
We do.
far as completing fire stations.
Absolutely.
I've had numerous conversations with residents in Concord Township, most of which said that it was too costly. It needs to be affordable. They're not necessarily concerned about the plans or don't really know what needs to be in a fire station other than it needs to be affordable. We believe, and none of us has ever said, that it is not important to solicit community input in a project like this. Nobody is disagreeing with that. What I'm telling you is that, as the trustees, we're elected by the residents of Concord Township to make decisions in the best interest of the township. That's what we're going to do. And we are going to welcome community collaboration. Nobody ever said we weren't.
Okay, but this is the point I'm trying to get at. And it's appreciated. It's great that you are willing to sit down and listen to people's input, but it is a far cry in one-on-one conversations than if you had a group of people that were selected, broad-based, including ACT, from Affordable Concord Taxes, to sit down and work through the process with you so that when it's signed, sealed, and delivered and the motion was made on the floor within the meeting that, yes, let's move forward, that you had the vast majority of Concord behind the effort. Why wouldn't you want to build that into the process? It could be my hearing, but you seem to be resistant to that, and I'm not really sure why.
I'm not saying I'm resistant to anything. I'm saying
But
we
you haven't-
have
okay.
not defined what the venue is going to be for that. So we'll definitely take what you're saying under advisement. We're going to have some discussion here in the very near future on how we're going to move this project forward.
Okay. Well, I'm long-winded. I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, and I was going to say, I think I'll go back to what I've said a couple times now is again, ACT has made it clear they have a committee together, and I'm very interested in names, and again, a little more, I mean, what is your thought you keep talking about an organized thing, so, you know, put something together in a sense that tells us how you envision it working. Because, you know, I've seen a draft of some concept of bylaws, and I have to, again, elected by the residents of Concord to govern the community, I have to have an understanding about how this is going to work before I can clearly evaluate. So are you asking me to come up with bylaws for your committee, or
I think,
that kind
well,
of thing?
I would think that that would be in your purview, is to figure out how it would operate. We are certainly, we represent a significant portion of the community that wants to move forward in a collaborative way, in a way that builds consensus, in a way that gives us the fire stations we need for the future.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't think it's up to us to dictate that. I do believe, as I've outlined in my email correspondence, which obviously are not public, but just in a nutshell, is that we worked with a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of people on election day agreed with us. I do believe it is valid. There's no other group, no other individual that better represents the vast majority of the vote that spoke on back in November. And so I do think that we need a seat at the table along with many other people. It needs to be broad-based. But I believe that it's incumbent upon the trustees to figure out how that mechanism works. I gave you the example of what happened at Riverside Schools. I don't believe there were bylaws per se, but there was consensus and feedback given and tweaks made and things like that. I don't know why that couldn't serve as a template.
There was no mission, there was no parameters, there was no document that drove how that committee worked, how it was selected, who selected it, yada, yada.
We did go out and we selected a broad cut, so from business and regular residents and elected officials and things like that. So, I mean, that as far as the makeup, it was important. Obviously, not everybody can participate, but we did want to have a broad-based collection of people that represented different segments of our constituency.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Mr. Hack, is this, the committee that was put together for the elementary school, is this like the one I was invited to that I participated in for the high school?
No.
It was run by a facilitator, and it was...
Yeah, and indeed you were there, and I thank you for attending that meeting. That meeting was kind of a more conceptual, and trying to get basic feedback from the community. What I'm talking about is in the design phase, the actual design phase, there was a committee that was made up of people from the schools. I participated from the board, and then we had people from business, we had people, community members, we had parents. And there were probably 10 or 12 different people that were involved with that. And as we were going through in the design phase, working with the architects.
Did the architect facilitate that, sir?
Yeah, he did, yes. I mean, they did facilitate that. But in this case, I think that we are talking more fundamentals, and so getting involved with something like that, as I described, and certainly I'd be happy to provide more feedback on the experience that we had at Riverside, but I...
I think that's fair, I guess, in my mind, is a little bit more of a conversation. Again, you say a committee, you say engagement, and then, that leaves me with a pretty broad perspective on all the different ways it could go. So I'm not trying to be, again, we want input. I'm not trying to be standoffish here, but again, provide a little more color for me or us, and maybe tonight isn't the time to talk about how that functioned, and maybe there's a time we can talk about how that experience. It sounds like that might be a more lengthy conversation, but again, that's what I'm asking for, is a little more clarification on how you see
I'd be happy to discuss that
I'm
further. I'm not, I'm not trying to get you, flat-footed. I know there's a lot going on. Obviously, this is at the top, and the reason that we're here is because this has got to be one of the issues that you are trying to address. So it needs to be discussed now, even though it is very early in your tenure. But I see this as an opportunity to really build consensus and confidence throughout the community, and this is a real opportunity, is what this is. Last question I have is, I know that it sounds like Mr. Rose and Chief have started some preliminary thinking and different things. has there been discussion among the trustees as to what the budget is going to be?
There is some discussion on budget. We're working on that right now. There's no lack of proactivity, is
That was a
indicated.
poor word.
But we are working on that. We will have a budget when we get to that, and we will welcome community input, and we'll have discussion on how that's gonna be, I guess, compiled or defined in the future,
Terrific,
in the very near future, okay?
terrific.
We haven't had any formal
No.
discussions. We're still collecting information based upon what can stay and what can go. So we have an idea.
Terrific, and so it's in the mix, it's being worked
Yes.
on. Okay, terrific. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hack. Yes, sir.
Hi. Stephen Lee, 7391 Far Hills. Just very quickly, I can clarify a lot of these questions. There's a misunderstanding on these names to be announced and who they are versus the ACT group, which I'm part of. Just to start with a general, community advisory panels have been around for decades. I've been on your side for two of them, two companies I've worked for, and I've facilitated and formed at least three more. So they are formal, informal, but they're ongoing. They're established, bylines or not, they just have parameters. And for Concord, they don't have to be formal. I've worked with Hoover, PPG, Bayer, the chemical company. And those are big, those were multi-year. They were mostly, EPA or,
Have you worked with any other government agencies, Mr. Lee?
no, I haven't. I'm a corporate, but, so the principles, let me finish. The principles are the same. Google CAP, it's the principle. So it is not at this public meeting, one-off or several, or a special town hall information meeting, because that information goes, but then there's nothing to follow up on. So I just got to be really clear now here today for this, I'm sorry, what's her name? Amy, for this municipality, ACT was not seeing action of more openness, more collaboration, more transparency. So we did that press release to push some buttons. Okay, so did it have an effect? I don't know. I'm not sure if it did or not. We thought you did. Carol, we thought you had a conversation with one of our members
I did.
and said you plan to, and you're going to have a representation, and that's great. You don't think that's worth it?
Okay, excuse me, I have Mr. Lucas, can you clarify for me, please? It's my understanding that any formal committee of the trustees has to have announcements in the paper, special
Yes,
meeting
yes,
notices. You can't
So,
have a
I'm
formal
not-
informal.
I'm not, all right, so again, let me finish. So this is going to be your committee. It has to be your committee. We would like representation. We'd like maybe more than one seat, but we won't be greedy. We would like at least that one seat. Now, you have to understand there's a difference between these subject matter experts. It's not who we're suggesting or requesting representation. Yes, you're going to have more people on the committee. You're going to have, what, 8 to 10? I'm making this up. It's your committee. You have to decide. It has to have minutes. And those minutes have to be made public. And those minutes have to be carried over to the next meeting.
Correct.
Now, the subject matter experts, we're still working with folks. We have advisors that won't be public. They're just to inform us. But we are going to make announcements, as we stated, as we publicly stated in the news release. We will make announcement on who these people, volunteers, interested individuals, Concord residents who want to be involved. And that will happen. We have a person who's an architect. Is he going to take over your architecture firm? Of course not. A finance person, a municipal finance person. Who else do we have? Oh, a hazmat, fire, emergency services, hazmat person. These are people to inform us. The news release was very, very, very specific. We are offering these individuals as an objective, third party, at a meeting that may have discussion about construction or design, well then if you'd like, we would have that person attend that meeting. Doesn't have to be. Finance budget. Our finance person, a municipal finance person, might attend, or we would just meet with him or her the night before, the day before, the week before, to get intelligence so that our representative is informed. It's just a way to make sure everybody's informed. We're not going to force anything. Again, the news release is very, very specific.
Okay, Mr. Lee,
Okay. Okay, what?
I'm listening to you.
All right, I'm done. Except I have one question. So you said people oppose it.
Yes.
Like, why would they oppose it? I saw a lot of next door, some really belligerent.
I'm not going to, I don't think it's.
No, I'm not asking you to
it's
tell.
not my job to relay
No.
those sentiments.
No, you participated in a stream that I started, and the one guy, he's like one of your zoning people, zoning commission, was belligerent, just absolute belligerent, and all of a sudden he closed his next door account. He was gone. Andy.
Okay.
So I mean, I saw some of the opposition. It's like,
You know, I'm not gonna, again,
I'm not asking
I'm
you.
only sharing, I'm
Yeah, I'm
all
telling
gonna tell
you,
is if people
yeah.
said, don't do it, I object to it, and there was multiple people, it was
Well, I
far
bet
more
there
than
was.
one or two, okay?
Well, I bet there was.
And, you know, again, I'm not gonna speak for them, they can speak for
no, I'm not
themselves.
asking you to.
so.
No. I didn't ask for an individual. I was asking,
Right, right.
was this on next door or was it
No, I was
individuals?
in my neighborhood,
Yeah.
in-person conversations.
So again, I want to make sure. The representation, the person we would like, maybe two, is from our ACT committee, the core committee. They're not the subject matter experts. Those are our resources. We're offering them, but you don't have to. You can say, screw you, we got the best architects in the nation. We got Chief Sable, we got our own firefighters. And you can say that, that's fine. They're still going to inform us. So when our representative comes to those meetings that we hope you form on an ongoing basis, not one-offs, we're just better informed. So we're not like activists. So that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Anyone else?
Denise Brewster, 7207 Alexander Road. I'm listening to the discussion, and I've really been, because I had talked to you on the phone. I, have come from a school background. I know how, you have to work with parents, and you have to work with community, and obviously your own administration. But pretty much, we kind of take the view that you want to be proactive, not reactive. And I think what was wrong with the last process, and I know you came into it late, Carl, and we had several conversations when you just came on board, because at first it was going to be a continual levy, and we kind of moved off that and ended up with the 28-year thing. But the main thing is that, we felt that the plan was already done, and then we're in a reactionary mode as citizens because it's already done. So, we try to offer as much information as possible. I probably called Andy too much. But anyway, we did succeed in at least saving the playground, moving the footprint of that whole building over, eliminating a parking lot, and then we made a lot of other suggestions. But obviously, we had to test it out in the community to see what is the community thinking, are they going to support this idea? And we know the results, so we move on. And my only thing would be is that we try to remain as open-minded as possible. It's hard because you're always going to have memories of what happened, but you have to move forward. And so at this point, I just want to talk about a little bit, because you had mentioned design versus cost. And, the specifications that go into a plan, and you know this because you have a strong construction background, whether it's the heating system or the amount of concrete or the exterior finish, all of that, it relates to design, but it also just tells you how much it's going to cost. So if you're going with brick or you're going with cultured stone, big difference in price. So, and we were looking at concrete driveways and things like that, trying to eliminate, because that type of concrete with the heaviness of the equipment is very costly. And so, you know, that's kind of where I was coming from, because I don't know if we were understanding each other on the phone that day. So, okay. And the only other question I had, is there, because I remember hearing it in the conversation, but is there a fiscal advisory group?
It's still on hold. They've only been here for 2 weeks. So we had a fiscal advisory group
Okay,
that their terms were ended. And
Okay.
one of those individuals has submitted her resume to be, you know, a part of whatever group there is.
okay,
But this is their second meeting. They've been on board for 2 weeks. So they
Okay.
are going to look at that in the second quarter of this year.
okay. So, I mean, there has been a fiscal advisory group in the past,
Sure.
and now this is like a new group, or
No, there
a
was,
start of it?
no, it's just on
Okay.
hold right
Okay.
now.
We had terms expiring, and it was
Oh.
presented to during the transition of making appointments, and with everything going on, we felt we wanted to give time to make thoughtful appointments, so we're just waiting to
Okay.
screen when we can get it into the flow of what we're doing.
Okay, so in that case, because that's an advisory group, like,
Well, it's-
how did that work? I mean, were they
Okay.
appointed, you know, are
Yes.
there posted
So,
meetings?
yes, they were appointed, each trustee got a pick, and they were appointed. It was an auditor-based committee, and it was their responsibility to sit down and do as the trustees wanted as far as auditing. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the individuals audited all of the pieces, parts in the service department.
Okay,
I had another individual, and this is along with attending the audits and things like that. Gosh, now you're gonna make me think, Denise. I have an individual who reviews all the financial statements every single month before the trustees get them.
okay,
She was the one who is a former fiscal officer of another entity,
Okay.
and she asked to be reappointed.
okay,
But with the trustee appointments, they have a department director appointment and several other individuals. I think they felt that they needed to sit down and figure out who it is they wanted to appoint. Generally in the past, we've had experts such as bankers, accountants, municipal entity
Right.
leaders, that type of thing.
okay,
And I'm going to speak for the trustees here without even asking them. My guess is that that will continue. There were formal minutes in the past. There were, I mean, that's all done formally, so.
okay. So are there, they don't actually have a meeting, like you said,
Yes.
one person, or they do
Well,
have meetings?
They're given
Yeah.
assignments and they
Okay.
do what they're going to do.
Okay.
In this particular case, the
Right.
one, I can speak specifically for the former fiscal officer, she was asked to review the financials on a periodic basis, and she did. Obviously,
Okay.
that was more of an informal thing.
Yeah,
So, and then if she had any questions or concerns, she either asked me or she went to the trustees.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay. I just didn't know how that worked, because when it said advisory group, I just wondered if it was something that it was a model to follow, or
oh, you mean
or
for the
expand
financial
upon,
advisory committee?
to expand
Okay, so
upon with this.
so it was an audit, again, it was an auditor function in
Mm-hmm.
2003. The state auditor decided that that would be a good idea, which I agree with.
Okay,
They basically mandated that everybody get one. I don't know whether everybody
Okay.
did. Mainly to help during the audit.
Right.
Now, the audit used to be a long, drawn-out process. The auditors would come in here for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Now they do everything by email.
yeah, schools
So
too.
part of that function is no longer necessary. We haven't discussed any names or, you know, if they know bankers or
Right.
people in the finance industry. I don't think we're there at that point. And so they made a pledge to me to start in the second quarter. Will this group of individuals be involved in the financial or in the fire station? My guess would be yes. It also depends on how much time they have to volunteer.
Right,
So, and it was an audit committee. We had a CPA on the committee. He changed the name because he was not physically audited. He had a big problem with that. So
Okay.
that's where the financial advisory committee comes.
Okay. well, it sounds like a good way to get input and,
Sure.
and, you know, have a check and balance. And the other thing I wanted to say is, I was able to attend my first JED meeting the other day, 8 o'clock in the morning on a Friday.
Early one, right?
Yes, and I got to meet Amy there. The notes were very detailed, so I was able to really catch up on what happened in October. And I know they meet 4 times, and there is going to be a strategic planning meeting, and it sounds like it's going to dovetail after Concord has their meeting, which I guess, I don't know if that's been set yet or not. It was, I think, Andy, you mentioned it might be at the end of February, but hard to say. So that's not
I
yet.
don't have that on
We haven't said it yet.
Okay.
They haven't gotten that.
Okay, all right. But yeah, if anyone hasn't gone, it's worthwhile going.
I just want to thank you, and there's one thing that you said that I think maybe it bears worth, you mentioned last time with respect to the fire station and the project, and when you started coming to meetings and so forth, and I guess I would like to just say, you know, that was the previous board, you know, this is a new board, and give us a chance
Oh, yeah.
to,
Well,
you know,
and I
from a
look at it,
standpoint
yeah.
of, you know, to kind of
Right.
go back to what Mr. Hack and Mr. Lee have been saying is as far as community engagement goes, I mean, we have no record of that
Right,
one way or the other. So that was another board's decisions about how they took the project. You know, as I've said, we're in this process of getting educated, and I definitely, you know, as much as you folks understand through engaging the community over the summer, understand people's thoughts and impressions of the fire station project, and I have my own conclusions based on feedback that I had as well. And the bottom line is, I think we all agree that communication and feedback from the community is important. So I think I look at this board and our challenge is how do we accomplish that?
Right.
And again, being early in the process of just getting our heads around, at least me getting my head around the project, I wouldn't say that I'm very clear on how that would proceed, but I do value it and,
Right.
and you know, give us a chance to put our presentation forward about how we feel about public engagement and realize the last board was the last board and they did things the way
Right.
they did.
right. And I understand the position you were in because you came into
Well,
it as, yeah.
like we discussed
And
on
so
the-
you had to kind of be together.
Like we discussed on the phone, we both agree there needs to be, you know, a forum and a vehicle for community involvement in the project, which we're gonna facilitate.
Right.
So we're working on
Okay,
that.
well, we're here as a community.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else in the audience portion? Sir?
Richard Zupka, 7236 Cascade Road.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
have
Could you spell your last name for me? please?
RZEPKA.
Thank you.
I just have one question to all of everyone in general. This is a very important project. When will you have a tentative timeline for its completion?
I guess I can't give you a definite answer on that. This is our second meeting. We're just in the process of getting acclimated and up to speed on the project parameters and some options. So we are going, that's, again, like I stated at the beginning of the meeting, this is our #1 priority. So we are working proactively to push this thing forward and move it forward as collectively, as not only the Board of Trustees, but with community engagement. And we are going to work on facilitating and getting that done in a timely fashion. I can't give you a direct timeline at this point.
Mr. Rose, correct me if I'm wrong, but construction was about 12 months for Station 1. Is that we were going to start moving earth this April, had it passed, and we would have been expected to be done early in 21, is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're looking at, you know, you're looking at a 12-month construction window. So as however long it takes us to get options and take a look at financing, I mean, and then,
A ballpark on that, an estimate?
you know, how,
2030?
no, I mean, I think, I was elected to a 4-year term, and I certainly hope I get 2 fire stations built in the next 4 years,
Okay.
let's say that.
And you'll publish the timeline soon, or I
Yeah.
imagine it's got to be one of your priorities.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Andrew Lingenfelter. I live at 7890 Forest Valley Lane, excuse me, Concord. I am the person that was referenced in an earlier conversation from another person, but I don't consider myself to be a belligerent person. But I am looking at the citizen advisory panel that this township elected duly in November, and was an additional person, Amy, was appointed by that group, and I don't think that there's really a need or any desire on the township standpoint to have some sort of a citizen advisory committee, especially one that's unelected, unappointed, and is just formed under no direction or request by the township officials. They didn't seek any sort of election. They just anointed themselves as an activity group to kind of muscle their way into the process, and trying to use what I consider a fairly one-sided defeat on a tax levy to use that as a justification for or a mandate from the township to appoint this panel. I don't think that's the case at all. I think if we wanted to really analyze this, we could probably lay this defeat at the feet of a lot of other issues in the township, one of which was probably the school levy that was passed the previous year. That certainly didn't help in terms of everybody coming back and wanting to open up their pocketbook again after getting racked with such a large tax increase over the school levy. So I think it's kind of disingenuous for certain school levy people to advocate for this kind of a thing after they engineered that tax increase, but that's neither here nor there. I don't think, with Morgan having a 66.98% victory in the election, Morgan McIntosh, and Carl, you had a 100% percentage in your favor for re-election and into your position. You ran unopposed. I don't think that gives you any more of a mandate to govern this township than if you won the election by a couple of percentage points. I think that your job is to basically take care of the township business, and I think the township residents indicated in this last election that they felt that they put the people that they felt were most suited to do that into the positions that you're in. And I lay full trust, in the township trustees to be able to put together a group if need be, to come up with any decisions on how the fire station should be processed. I think that if there is to be any sort of an advisory panel, I think it's one that should be put together by the trustees. It's something that should be advertised in the News Herald, that should be put out there on social media, and we should give every citizen in the township an opportunity, if they're interested, to step forward and participate in this committee. Okay, how you allow, or how you would anyway justify allowing some small group that puts together an advisory panel with no transparency to the township, with no authority by the township, and allow them to interject themselves and give them a seat at the table because they feel that a 60% margin on a levy defeat somehow entitles them to that. I think that's wrong. I think it's an incorrect way to go about this. I have served on 2 advisory panels for this township in the years that I've lived here, and both times those advisory panels were well advertised. They were put out there for public purview. The panels were selected, and everybody sat on the panel, and it was a very good experience. Okay, so I don't think that there's anything wrong with the idea of a citizen advisory panel or a committee for these types of things, but I think it's wrong to allow a small group that puts themselves together and forms a 501c or whatever, creates a political action committee, that somehow invites them to insert themselves into the process. I think it's something that we should allow the trustees, if you feel that it's necessary to put together a committee of subject matter experts or other people that, financial people or whatever, construction people that you feel could provide some additional insight into the process, then I think that's a decision that you should make. Okay, because I think the township residents made a decision as to the people that everybody felt comfortable with by a pretty large margin. Okay, so I guess the other thing I think when I think about this citizen advisory panel, You know, this is also the same group of people that engineered the defeat of the levy, okay? And they used what, in my opinion, is some rather unscrupulous methods in the process. They spread a lot of disinformation and misinformation about the levy and the costs associated. I think they promulgated a bunch of fear in the minds of some of the residents as to how much it was really going to cost. I think they took a lot of creative license with the way they presented it. They also posted signs for the anti-levy in illegal places all over the township. Anybody that lives in the township that drove around, you could see where those signs were not legal. They were in road right-of-ways on vacant lots. That's not the way, and then we're gonna take those people that ran that kind of a campaign, and then we're gonna put them and let them insert themselves into the process of advising the township? Come on. I think we can do much better than that. I think we could put together a much better panel than people that choose to use those kind of methods and tactics to defeat, a tax levy. Lastly, I think, my response to this group is pretty simple. If you want direct input in how the township goes, pull a petition, file for the election, run a campaign, go door to door, meet your fellow citizens, and run for election and win a seat. And then you'll be given all the opportunity to give all the input you want. And as far as I'm concerned, what went on this evening, I think was a pretty good example of giving citizen input. I mean, there were several people that stood up here and took quite a bit of time to discuss what their thoughts and feelings were, unabated. I didn't hear anybody from the board interrupt them or be discourteous or in any way disrespectful. They listened to what they had to say and they said what they had to say. I think this must not be allowed to stand. I don't think that we should allow any panel to insert themselves in the process, because if we do, I think that we will open a Pandora's box of interlopers and malcontents moving forward for any type of levy or any kind of decision for this township moving forward. I think it would send a very bad signal. Because then what do? We manage the township by committee? I don't think so. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the audience?
I reject being considered a malcontent.
Sir? It's the formal meeting, so if you could just come up to the podium, please.
Richard Zepka, I reject being characterized as a malcontent, just because I don't happen to agree with somebody. Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience portion? Okay, that will move us to old business. I believe we have one item in old business this evening, which is the December financial report, Mrs. Dawson?
Yes, that's correct.
We need to-
We finished the year at $5,103,614 overall, so.
Okay, we need a motion to approve that.
I move to approve the December financial report.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, on to new business. I believe we have a resolution.
Yes, that's Resolution 2020-02. If I could just give you a basic background on
Please.
it. So we have an agency fund. It's got approximately $4,800 in it. We'll specifically talk about that. Its main purpose back in the day was to hold on to security deposits until rentals were completed at the community center, and then the money was released. The state auditor decided that we need to be in compliance with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board statement number 84, and our accounting software was changed in December to basically state that if it's going to remain in an agency fund, it needs to be a fiduciary fund. It's not a trust fund. It's really it's needs to be moved back into the general fund because it's a function of the community center. So it's a wash transaction basically. The money comes in, the money goes out, and not for a long period of time. So after several discussions with the state auditor's office and Mr. Lucas, we decided, at least for the time being and maybe permanently, just to transfer those funds back into the general fund from which they came originally to start up. So I'm going to hand that to Mr. McIntosh. You need to
Yep.
read that paragraph, please.
Mr. Chairman, I move to a vote to accept resolution number 2020-2, resolution by the Concord Board of Trustees authorizing the closure of Township Agency Fund 9001 and transfer of those monies held in that account to the Township General Fund 1000, and thereby ensure compliance with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Number Statement 84 fiduciary activities.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next on the new business is a conditional offer of employment to Melissa Hopper, part-time assistant fiscal officer at $18 per hour, 15 hours per week, pending completion of new hire paperwork. Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yes, Melissa came in. She met with Cindy and Andy and myself. She has, I would say she averages 15 years with a banking background. She's looking for something very part-time, which we were looking for as well. She has a master's degree from Cleveland State. Her undergraduate was from Bowling Green. And she currently runs a couple businesses on her own. Just can't wait to become involved with Concord Town. She's a resident.
Great.
So I would love to have you welcome her on board.
Great. We'll vote for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I moved to make conditional offer of employment to Melissa Hopper for part-time assistant fiscal officer at $18 an hour for 15 hours per week, pending completion of new hire paperwork.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next is an amendment to Stone Ridge Estates preliminary plan previously approved for the Stone Ridge Estates residential conservation development. I believe we have Representative Dave Novak here just to give a brief summary to the township residents on this. Thank you, Mr. Novak.
Good evening, my name is David Novak. My address is 9114 Tyler Boulevard, Metro, Ohio. I'm the president of Barrington Consulting Group. Just real briefly, this was a project that started quite a few years ago. And phase one, I think the build out of the improvements and so forth was done somewhere around 2012. We're now trying to go and finish the development, but since 2012, Concord passed some new regulations when it comes to riparian setbacks and wetlands and so forth. So because of those new regulations, it's made it we had to change the plan to comply with those regulations. So this new plan complies with those regulations, and you know, it's the same number of lots. The open space is increased ever so slightly, and so we're just here to get you know, if I need to answer any questions or you know, ask for your approval for the new plan.
Make a motion to approve.
I just for the record, we did have time with you in office hours to ask a number of questions, and I think to that point, my questions have been satisfied during that conversation.
Yeah, we did have significant discussion in office hours as far as the changes and recommendations by Heather Freeman with our zoning department, and we're satisfied with the changes that have been made. Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept, to approve the amended Stone Ridge Estates preliminary plan previously approved for the Stone Ridge Estates residential conservation development.
And I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next under new business is,
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. For item D, you're gonna be working to set a public hearing for the proposal by Ralph Victor Construction that has already been to the zoning commission and is coming up. I would recommend that you allow a half hour for that. So I would suggest February 3rd, prior to our next meeting, make that public hearing at 7 o'clock to allow ample time for resident input. There was quite a bit of resident input at the planning, there's plenty of discussion at the zoning commission. I apologize for misspeaking, and I would anticipate that a number of those residents will return for the second public hearing, so I would allow for ample time. I just wanted to interject that. And then we can adjust the office hours. Instead of 6:30, we'll make that 7 to 7:30, if that's okay with the board.
No.
But that's,
No, you're gonna put office hours at 6.
oh,
instead
I'm
of
sorry.
6:30 to start.
Yeah, it'll be short, 6:30 to 7, and then the public hearing will start at
6 to
7.
7,
I'm sorry, I had it.
6 to 7.
Yes, I apologize.
Whatever you wanna do.
On the
You
3rd.
guys set that up.
Okay.
I just want to make sure you get plenty of time, because
6 to
that,
7 for
I
office
want to make
hours.
sure folks have an opportunity to
So we're gonna make
To
a
speak.
motion for a public hearing. It's gonna be set on February 3rd at 7 o'clock. Is that correct? And office hours will be from,
Yeah, you don't have to vote on it.
Okay.
You just set it. So you're,
Okay,
you
we're
want,
changing
you
that.
want 6 to 7 office hours that day?
correct, on the
Yes.
3rd.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And then we'll have the public hearing set for 7 o'clock. Yep, to 7:30.
And that will be on, well, there's a typo on the agenda, that will be on Monday, February 3rd, because we're going to be down at the Ohio Township Association on Wednesday, February 5th, which is why we changed that. And the formal public schedule has it on Monday, 2/3, and I apologize for the typo. It was a crazy day.
Would you like me to do the future meetings and announcements,
Sure.
Mr. Gondorfer? Okay.
Thank you.
On Monday, January 20th, will be closed in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. On Friday, the 31st of January at 9 a.m., there'll be a staff meeting here at the conference room. Monday, I almost messed up. Monday, February 3rd, from 6 to 7 p.m., we'll have office hours here in the conference room. At 7 p.m., we'll have the public hearing, and the regular trustee meeting will be directly following the public hearing. On Tuesday, the 4th of February at 10 a.m., there'll be a bid opening on the road projects from the engineer's office, and at 7 p.m. that evening, the zoning commission meeting here at Town Hall.
Thank you. Before we move into executive session to consider employment of a public employee, I would like to thank everybody. There was a lot of discussion here tonight. I can assure you that as chairman of the board, I'm collectively speaking on all of our parts, that we are committed to serving the best interests of the township and working with the community on this fire station project. So we will do our due diligence to move this project forward, and I would thank everybody that was here tonight for coming up and speaking, and we appreciate your input.
Need to ask for motion.
And I need a motion now to move into executive session to consider employment of a public employee pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 121.22G1.
Mr. Chairman, I move we go into executive session.
Is there a second?
Second.
Wait, just so the record's clear, to discuss the employment of a public employee.
Just
To
give her
discuss,
the
yeah.
language, Carl.
I move to go into executive session to discuss the public employment position pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 121.22.
Second.
All in favor?
No,
No,
gotta have a roll call
Roll
vote.
call.
Roll call.
Right.
Mrs. Lucci,
Yes.
Mr. Dondorfer.
Yes.
And Mr. McIntosh.
Yes.
Thank you for those that are attending, and if you're free to go if you like, or you can stay and wait for us to return from the executive session. Thank you.